The music was slow, soft, the kind that wraps around a crowded room like a secret. And there I was, standing in the center of the ballroom, dancing with the one person everyone else avoided. Her hand trembled in mine. Half of her face was hidden behind a silver mask, but the other half, scarred, burned, and painfully real, was enough to make the entire room whisper. People stared. Some pretended not to look. Others looked too long. But she didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned closer and whispered something into my ear, something I still hear every single night. I won't forget you. 3 words, soft, quiet, but heavy enough to change my life forever. Because what I didn't know at that moment, what no one in that ballroom knew, was that the girl dancing with me wasn't just any girl. She was the daughter of one of the most powerful CEOs in the country. And by the end of that night, trust would be shattered. Secrets would surface, and I would discover that kindness can be more dangerous than cruelty. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is my story of betrayal, and if you've ever trusted the wrong person, hit that subscribe button because you are not alone. Here is how it happened. A few weeks before that night, my life was painfully normal. I wasn't rich, I wasn't powerful, and I definitely didn't belong anywhere near people like Jonathan Hale. But somehow, I ended up right in the middle of his world. My name is Daniel Carter. At the time, I was working as a junior event coordinator for a luxury hotel chain. It wasn't glamorous work, mostly long hours, demanding clients, and pretending not to hear billionaires complain about the color of napkins. But the job had one rule that mattered more than anything else. Never draw attention to yourself. Smile, serve, disappear. That was the job. And for 2 years, I followed that rule perfectly. Until the night, everything changed. The email came on a Tuesday morning. Subject line, confidential, VIP event assignment. I almost ignored it. Most VIP events were boring corporate galas where executives congratulated themselves for being rich. But when I opened the message, my stomach dropped. The event host was Jonathan Hale, CEO of Hale International, tech billionaire, the kind of man whose name showed up on business magazines, investment channels, and political donor lists. If he hosted an event, the guest list would be dangerous. Not dangerous like criminals, dangerous like power. And when powerful people gather, mistakes become headlines. I was assigned to ballroom coordination, which meant I had to oversee the floor, guest movement, music cues, and emergency logistics. Basically, if anything went wrong, it would be my fault. Great. The gala was scheduled for Saturday night. 300 guests, private orchestra, international media, and a theme that made everyone in the planning team nervous: the masked night of renewal. No one knew what that meant, but billionaires love mystery. The day before the event, something strange happened. While reviewing the seating chart, I noticed something unusual. One table, near the dance floor, reserved for guest, private. No name, no company, no title, just private. And next to the note, a warning. No photography, no media approach, no guest interaction unless initiated. That was weird, very weird, because even celebrities didn't get rules like that. Curious, I asked my manager. She went pale immediately. Then she closed the laptop. Daniel, forget you saw that. That answer only made it worse. Who is it? She shook her head slowly. You really don't want to know. Now I definitely wanted to know, but before I could press further, she added something that made my skin crawl. If that guest speaks to you, you be polite, extremely polite, and don't stare. Saturday night arrived. The ballroom looked unreal. Crystal chandeliers glowing like frozen stars, gold-lit walls, masks everywhere, feathers, velvet, jewels. People laughed too loudly. Champagne flowed like water. And at exactly 8:10 p.m., Jonathan Hale entered the room. The entire crowd shifted instantly. You could feel the power ripple through the air. Tall, sharp suit, eyes that scanned people the way investors scan numbers. He didn't smile much. Men like him rarely do. Behind him walked a small group of security and executives, but something was missing. Someone. His daughter. Rumor said he had one, but no one ever saw her in public. Some said she lived abroad. Some said she was sick. Others said something darker. I ignored the gossip until 8:37 p.m. because that was the moment the ballroom doors opened again and the room fell silent. She stepped inside slowly, wearing a silver dress that shimmered like moonlight. A delicate mask covered half her face, but the other half, scarred, burned, and painfully real, was enough to make the entire room whisper. People stared. Some pretended not to look. Others looked too long. But she didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned closer and whispered something into my ear. Something I still hear every single night. Good. Because tonight, everything is about to change. And then we walked onto the dance floor. But what happened during that dance was something I never saw coming. And by the time the music ended, someone in that room had already decided to destroy me. The moment we stepped onto the dance floor, the entire ballroom shifted. You could feel it. 300 conversations fading into whispers, glasses pausing halfway to lips, eyes locking onto us like magnets. No one expected this. Not the executives, not the journalists hiding near the bar, and definitely not the men who had spent the last hour pretending the CEO's daughter didn't exist. But now, she was in the center of the room, and she was dancing with me. Her hand rested lightly in mine as the orchestra played a slow waltz. Up close, the scars were even more visible. The burn marks ran from her cheekbone down toward her jaw, uneven and pale under the ballroom lights. But what surprised me wasn't the scars. It was her eyes. Calm, focused, almost amused, like she already knew how uncomfortable everyone else was. "You're shaking," she said quietly. I hadn't even realized it. "Sorry," I murmured. "First time dancing in front of half the country's elite." She gave a faint laugh. "Trust me, they're more afraid of you right now." I frowned. Why would they be afraid of me? Her eyes flicked across the ballroom, then back to mine. "Because you did something none of them dared to do." The orchestra swelled. We turned slowly across the floor. "And what's that?" I asked. "You treated me like a human being." The words landed heavier than I expected. For a moment, I didn't know what to say, so I did the only thing that felt natural. "I mean, you are." That made her smile again. But this time, it was different, softer, almost grateful. Around us, the whispers were growing. I could see people leaning toward each other, phones subtly appearing, security watching closely. And at the far end of the room, standing near the staircase, was Jonathan Hale, watching, not smiling, not frowning, just observing. The kind of stare that made you feel like a chess piece. "What's your name?" she asked. "Daniel." She repeated it slowly. "Daniel," like she was testing how it sounded. I'm Elena. Elena Hale. The name suddenly connected in my mind. I had heard it once before, months earlier, when someone in the hotel mentioned a private medical suite booking under the Hale family name. At the time, I didn't think much of it. But now, looking at her scars, something clicked. "You don't have to look at them like that," she said suddenly. My eyes snapped back to hers. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." "I know," she said it gently. "You're curious. Everyone is." There was no anger in her voice, just tired acceptance. "How did it happen?" I asked before I could stop myself. For a brief moment, the air between us changed. Not tense, but heavier. Her gaze drifted toward the chandeliers above us. "The fire." Just 2 words, but they carried an entire story. I swallowed. "That must have been horrible." She nodded slowly. "It was." Then she leaned slightly closer. "So horrible that my father decided the world shouldn't see me anymore." That sentence hit harder than the scars. "You mean he hid you?" She tilted her head. "Protected. That's the word he uses." Her tone made it clear she didn't agree. The orchestra slowed, our steps became softer, and for the first time, I noticed something strange. People weren't just watching us, they were watching her reaction to me, like this dance was some kind of test. "Elena," I said quietly, "why did your father ask me to dance with you?" She was genuinely surprised. "He asked you?" "Yes." Her brows pulled together. "That's interesting." "Why?" "Because he normally scares people away from me." The orchestra swelled. We spun gently under the chandelier light. "You know," she continued, "you're the first stranger to speak to me in public in almost 2 years." 2 years? I almost missed a step. That's insane. Is it? She looked around the room. "Look at them, Daniel." I followed her gaze. Powerful men, influential women, media personalities, all pretending they weren't staring. They're not scared of the scars. They're scared of what the scars remind them of. And what's that? That life can destroy anyone, even the daughter of Jonathan Hale. The orchestra transitioned into a slower piece. Our dance continued, and somehow, despite the audience, it began to feel strangely normal. Just 2 people moving with the music. "You're different," she said after a moment. "How so?" "You're not trying to impress me." I chuckled softly. "I'm just trying not to trip." That made her laugh. A real laugh this time, not polite, not controlled. And when she laughed, the tension in the room cracked slightly, because suddenly the scarred girl everyone avoided looked happy. But the moment didn't last, because halfway through the song, I noticed someone approaching the dance floor. A tall man in an expensive navy suit, perfect hair, confident smile. The kind of man who knew cameras loved him. Elena saw him too. Her smile disappeared instantly. "Great," she muttered quietly. "Who's that?" She sighed quietly. "Victor." The name clearly meant something unpleasant. "He's one of my father's senior executives, and he believes marrying me would be good for his career." I blinked. "Seriously?" "Very." Victor stopped at the edge of the dance floor, watching us. His smile was polite, but his eyes were cold. Then he raised a champagne glass toward Elena, like a silent challenge. "What's his problem with me?" I asked. "You exist," she replied quietly. "And right now, that's ruining his plans." The song ended. Applause rippled across the ballroom. Soft, awkward, like people weren't sure if they were supposed to clap. Elena didn't move right away. Instead, she looked directly into my eyes. "Daniel, can I ask you something?"
Of course. Her voice lowered. If you knew helping someone would make powerful people hate you, would you still do it? That was a strange question, but something about her expression told me it mattered, so I answered honestly. Yes. She studied my face carefully, like she was searching for a lie. Then she nodded once. Good. Why? Before she could answer, Victor stepped onto the dance floor, slow claps echoing from his hands. Well, he said smoothly, that was unexpected. Elena's grip on my hand tightened.
The air around the dance floor turned heavy the moment Jonathan Hale spoke Victor's name. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. When a man like Hale talks, people listen. Victor immediately straightened his jacket and turned around, his confident smile returning like a mask snapping back into place. "Mr. Hale," he said smoothly, "I was just congratulating your daughter on her performance." Elena's fingers tightened around mine again. I could feel the tension in her hand. Hale's eyes shifted briefly toward me, just a quick glance, but it felt like standing under a microscope. Then his gaze returned to Victor. "Daniel was invited to dance," Hale said calmly. The ballroom went silent again. Victor blinked. "You invited him?" "Yes." Hale didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. Victor forced a polite chuckle. "Well, of course, a charming gesture," but the irritation in his voice was impossible to hide. He turned toward Elena. "You look lovely tonight." She didn't answer. Instead, she slowly released my hand and stepped slightly away from both of us. Her posture was calm, but distant, like someone watching a chess match between two players she didn't trust. Hale finally addressed me. "Daniel Carter." I straightened instinctively. "Yes, sir." "Walk with me." Not a request, an order. My heart started beating faster. I glanced at Elena for a second. Her expression was unreadable, but she gave the smallest nod, so I followed. We moved away from the dance floor toward a quieter hallway beside the ballroom. Behind us, the orchestra began playing again, and the guests slowly resumed their conversations. But something had changed. People were watching me, like I had just stepped into a story none of them understood yet. Hale stopped near a tall window overlooking the city. The skyline glittered with lights below. For a few seconds, he said nothing. Then he spoke. "You handled that well." I wasn't sure what he meant. "Sir?" "Victor enjoys humiliating people," Hale continued. "You didn't give him the opportunity." "I was just doing my job." Hale's eyes narrowed slightly. "That's not entirely true." I stayed quiet because arguing with a billionaire CEO felt like a bad career move. He studied me carefully. "You're not intimidated easily." I almost laughed. Inside, I was absolutely terrified, but I kept my voice steady. I try to stay professional. A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. Professional and honest. Then he asked something unexpected. "What did Elena say to you during the dance?" That question immediately set off alarms in my head. Why would he ask that? "She introduced herself," I replied carefully. "And we talked." "About what?" "Normal things." Hale watched my face closely, like he was measuring every word. Then he nodded slowly. "Good." That single word made me even more nervous because it sounded like I had just passed a test I didn't know I was taking. "Daniel," Hale said after a moment, "tell me something honestly." "Yes, sir." "When you first saw my daughter, what did you think?" The question hit me harder than I expected. I hesitated because the truthful answer felt dangerous, but something told me lying would be worse. "I thought the room was cruel." Hale's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. "Explain." 300 people pretending not to see her," I said quietly.
That felt worse than the scars. The silence that followed stretched for several seconds. Then Hale exhaled slowly. Interesting. He turned back toward the ballroom doors. Most people tell me they felt pity. I didn't feel pity. What did you feel? I thought about Elena's eyes when we danced. Tiredness. Hale's jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't comment. Instead, he said something that surprised me again. Elena chose the theme for tonight's event. The masked gala? Yes. Why? His voice became quieter. Because she wanted to see who would still approach her, even when they couldn't hide behind politeness. The meaning sank in slowly. You mean the dance floor was a test? In a way. And I passed it. Yes, but the way he said it didn't sound entirely positive. Before I could ask another question, the ballroom doors behind us opened. Elena stepped into the hallway. Her silver dress shimmered under the softer corridor lights. She looked between us. Are you interrogating him? Hale's voice softened slightly. We were talking. Elena crossed her arms. You scare people when you talk. I'm aware. She rolled her eyes, then looked at me. You're still alive. That's impressive. I smiled awkwardly. Barely. She laughed quietly, but Hale didn't seem amused. Instead, he said something that shifted the entire atmosphere again. Elena, Victor has made another proposal. Her face disappeared instantly. Of course he has. He believes a public engagement would strengthen investor confidence. Elena's eyes turned icy. So I'm a stock price now. Don't be dramatic. She took a step closer to her father. Did you agree to it? Hale didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. Elena looked furious. Not loud, not emotional, just deeply angry. That man has been circling me for 2 years like a vulture, and you're actually considering it? Hale's voice remained calm. Victor is ambitious. He's manipulative. He's effective. He's disgusting. The tension between them was sharp enough to cut glass, and suddenly I realized something horrible. I was standing in the middle of a family argument involving one of the most powerful men in the country, which meant I absolutely should not be here. I should probably return to the ballroom, I said carefully. But Elena stopped me. No. Both Hale and I looked at her. Her gaze locked onto mine. Stay. Why? She hesitated for a moment, then said something unexpected. Because you're the only honest person in this entire building tonight. Hale raised an eyebrow. That's quite a statement. Elena ignored him. Instead, she looked at me again. Daniel, if you were in my position, would you marry Victor? That question felt like a trap. I glanced at Hale, then back at her. Honestly? Yes. No. She smiled faintly. Good answer. But Hale's expression darkened slightly. Your opinion was not requested. Actually, Elena replied, it was. The hallway fell quiet again. Then Hale turned to me one more time. Daniel, return to your duties. Relief flooded through me. Yes, sir. I started walking back toward the ballroom doors, but just before I stepped inside, Elena's voice stopped me. Daniel. I turned around. She was watching me carefully, like she was deciding something important. Then she said the words that would start everything.
The rest of the gala felt different after that conversation. Before, I had been part of the background, just another staff member in a black suit, quietly moving between tables, adjusting lighting cues, coordinating with the orchestra, invisible. But now, I could feel eyes following me. Not everyone's, but enough to make the air feel heavy. And one pair of eyes in particular never seemed to look away. Victor. Every time I glanced toward the VIP section, he was watching. Not openly hostile, just calculating, like he was trying to figure out where I fit in the puzzle, which made sense. A random hotel staff member dancing with the CEO's daughter didn't fit into anyone's expectations, and powerful people hate variables they can't control. By 10:30 p.m., the ballroom was louder. Champagne had loosened conversations. The orchestra had shifted to livelier music. Executives laughed, investors negotiated deals between dances, and the press photographers tried to pretend they weren't staring every time Elena moved through the room, because she wasn't hiding anymore. That surprised me. After our dance, I expected her to retreat back into the shadows, but instead, she walked confidently between groups of guests, sometimes speaking, sometimes just listening. People reacted in very different ways. Some smiled politely, some looked uncomfortable, some avoided her entirely. But every time she passed near my section of the room, she glanced at me, just for a second, almost like a silent reminder. Midnight, balcony level. At 11:10 p.m., my manager cornered me near the bar. "Daniel," she whispered urgently, "what did you do?" "I danced." "That's exactly the problem." She looked over her shoulder nervously. "You're being talked about." "By who?" "Everyone." Great. Exactly what a hotel employee wants during a high-profile event. Attention. "What are they saying?" I asked. "That Hale personally selected you, that Victor is furious, and that the daughter seems interested." I almost laughed. "That's ridiculous." "Maybe," she said, "but rumors move faster than truth in rooms like this." At 11:30 p.m., something else happened, something that made the tension even worse. Victor approached me directly. I was adjusting a lighting console when his shadow fell across the control panel. "Daniel Carter?" His voice was calm, too calm. "Yes?" He smiled politely, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You've had quite the evening." "I'm just doing my job." "Of course." He leaned casually against the console. "Tell me something." "Yes?" "Did Mr. Hale explain why he chose you to dance with Elena?" "No." Victor smiled wide and slightly. "That's interesting." "Why?" "Because Jonathan Hale doesn't do anything without a reason." I didn't respond. So Victor continued. "You see, I've known the Hale family for 10 years. His tone lowered slightly. "And in that time, Elena has never danced with a stranger." That detail made my stomach twist. "Then maybe tonight was different." Victor's eyes narrowed. "Oh, it was different." He leaned closer. "So different that I can't help wondering what you said to her." "Nothing unusual." "I doubt that." His gaze shifted briefly across the ballroom toward Elena. She was speaking with 2 investors near the stage. Then Victor said something that sent a chill through me. "Do you know what happened the night of the fire?" I froze. Elena's words echoed in my head. "I want to tell you the truth about the fire." "I've heard rumors," I said cautiously. Victor chuckled. "Everyone has." He studied my face carefully, but rumors rarely include the most interesting detail. "And what's that?" Victor straightened his jacket. "The fire wasn't an accident." My heartbeat quickened. "What do you mean?" Victor smiled slowly. "Exactly what I said." Then he walked away, leaving me standing there with 1,000 new questions. 11:52 p.m. The orchestra announced the final dance of the evening. Guests gathered near the floor. The energy in the ballroom reached its peak, but I wasn't paying attention anymore, because in 8 minutes, I was supposed to meet the CEO's daughter on a private balcony to hear the truth about a fire that might not have been an accident. And according to Victor, that truth was dangerous. 11:59 p.m. I slipped quietly out of the ballroom. No one stopped me. Staff moved through the corridors, preparing the midnight fireworks display scheduled for the Gala's finale. I took the elevator to the upper level. The doors opened into a dimly lit hallway lined with glass windows overlooking the city, and at the far end, a single door led to the balcony. My heart was pounding. I wasn't sure why. Maybe curiosity, maybe instinct, maybe the strange feeling that I was stepping into something far bigger than a conversation. I pushed the door open. Cool night air rushed in immediately. The city stretched below in endless lights, and standing near the balcony railing was Elena. Her silver dress moved gently in the wind. The mask was gone now. For the first time, I saw her entire face clearly, scars and all. She didn't look embarrassed. She didn't look angry. She just looked honest. "You came," she said softly. "You asked." She smiled faintly. "Most people wouldn't." I stepped closer. "Victor told me something strange tonight." Her eyes sharpened. "What?" "He said the fire wasn't an accident." The wind moved her hair slightly. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she nodded slowly. "He's right." The words hit me like a punch. "You're serious?" "Yes." "Then what happened?" Elena looked down at the city lights below. Her voice became quieter. "The night of the fire, someone tried to kill me." My breath caught. "What?" "I was 16, home alone in the east wing of our house." Her fingers tightened around the balcony railing. "And suddenly, the hallway outside my room filled with smoke." "That's horrible." "It gets worse." She turned toward me. "There was only one person who knew I was there that night." "Who?" Elena hesitated, like saying the name out loud still felt dangerous. Then she whispered, "Victor." My heart skipped. "You think he started the fire?" "I know he did." "Then why isn't he in prison?" Her smile was bitter. "Because the evidence disappeared, and my father refused to believe his most trusted executive could do something like that." I stared at her. "Wait, you mean Jonathan Hale doesn't know?" "Oh, he knows the fire happened," she said quietly, "but he believes it was an electrical accident. Why didn't you tell—" The slow clap echoed across the balcony. Victor stepped forward from the doorway like a man who had just walked into a play he'd been waiting to watch. "Well," he said again, smiling calmly, "this is unexpected." The cold wind swept across the balcony, carrying the distant sound of fireworks technicians preparing the midnight show below. But the atmosphere around us had changed completely. Elena didn't move. Her eyes locked onto Victor like she was staring at a ghost. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. Victor tilted his head slightly. "On the contrary, Elena, I was invited." "By who?" He glanced at me. "By curiosity." I felt a chill crawl down my spine because the way he said it made it clear this wasn't an accident. He had followed me. Victor took another slow step onto the balcony. "You know," he continued casually, "I had a feeling tonight would become interesting the moment our dear Daniel appeared on the dance floor." My throat tightened. "So I decided to observe." Elena's voice hardened. "How much did you hear?" Victor pretended to think. "Let's see." He began counting lightly on his fingers. "The fire, the accusation, the heroic plan to expose me." His smile widened. "Oh, yes, I heard enough." The silence that followed felt suffocating because the truth was now floating openly in the air, and there was no way to pull it back. Victor walked toward the balcony railing, stopping a few feet from us. The city lights reflected faintly in his eyes. You know what fascinates me most, he said thoughtfully. What? Elena asked coldly. That after all these years, you still believe you understand what happened that night. Her jaw tightened. I was there. Were you? His voice softened dangerously. Yes, she snapped. I was the one trapped in the fire. Victor nodded slowly. That's true. Then stop pretending you're innocent. Victor chuckled. I never said I was innocent. Those words hit like a shockwave. Elena blinked. What? Victor turned to face her fully now. Now I simply said you don't understand the full story. My pulse was racing. Something about this conversation felt deeply wrong, like we were standing on the edge of a cliff and no one had noticed yet. Elena stepped forward. You set that fire. Victor shrugged lightly. Perhaps, perhaps. But ask yourself something, he continued calmly. If I truly wanted you dead, do you really think you would have survived? The question hung in the cold air. Elena's eyes burned with anger. You're sick. Maybe. Victor's gaze shifted toward me again. And Daniel here is the real surprise. I forced myself to stay calm. I'm just a hotel employee. Yes, Victor said slowly. That's what makes you so dangerous. The fireworks countdown began faintly in the distance, 5 minutes to midnight. Music from the ballroom drifted up through the open balcony doors, but none of us were paying attention anymore. Victor took another slow step closer. Elena, he said softly, do you know why your father trusts me? Because you manipulate him. Partially. Victor leaned against the railing, but mostly because I saved your life. The words stunned us both. Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. You're lying. Victor shook his head slowly. That night, the fire started in the control room. Convenient story, she snapped. But here's the detail you never learned, he continued calmly. You weren't supposed to be in the East Wing. Elena frowned. What does that mean? Victor sighed lightly. Someone else arranged that. The air between us grew colder. Who? Elena demanded. Victor smiled again. That's the part I've always wondered if you would eventually discover. Suddenly, the balcony door opened again. All three of us turned, and standing there, watching the entire scene unfold, was Jonathan Hale, the most powerful man in the room, and judging by the expression on his face, he heard enough to understand something was very wrong. Victor, Hale said quietly. Victor straightened instantly. Mr. Hale, what is happening here? His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. Elena looked at her father. You need to hear the truth. Hale's eyes moved between all three of us. What truth? Elena took a breath. Victor started the fire that nearly killed me. The words landed like thunder. The city fireworks began exploding in the sky at that exact moment, bright colors reflecting across the balcony glass. But Hale didn't look up. He was staring directly at Victor, waiting. Victor sighed slowly. Well, this is awkward. Answer the accusation. Victor glanced at Elena, then at me, then back to Hale, and finally said something none of us expected. She's half right. Elena froze. What? Victor's voice remained calm. The fire happened, and I was there. Hale's eyes narrowed. Explain. Victor hesitated for a moment, then spoke. I went to the control room because the building alarm system triggered. And? Hale asked. And I found someone inside. The fireworks outside exploded again in brilliant flashes of red and gold. Victor's voice dropped lower. That someone The balcony fell silent, except for the distant echo of fireworks exploding over the city. Colorful bursts reflected in the glass doors behind us, flashing red, gold, and blue across our faces. But none of us were looking at the sky anymore. All eyes were on the phone in Jonathan Hale's hand. Victor folded his arms calmly. "Elena," he said softly, "perhaps you should explain before your father presses play." Her breathing had changed, not panicked, but unsteady, which was the first time I had seen her lose control all night. "Elena?" Hale said firmly. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared at the phone like it was a weapon. Finally, she whispered, "That video doesn't show the whole truth." Victor smiled faintly. "Videos rarely do." Hale tapped the screen. The video began playing. We couldn't see the screen clearly from where we stood, but Hale's expression slowly shifted as the footage rolled. Confusion, then concern, then something darker. "Elena," he said quietly, "what am I looking at?" Her voice trembled slightly. "Dad, listen to me first. Answer the question." Victor glanced at me briefly. His expression almost looked satisfied, like a man watching a long-delayed plan finally unfold. Hale turned the phone toward us. Now we could see it. Black and white security footage. Timestamp 11:47 p.m. East Wing Control Room. The image showed a hallway outside a small electrical room. The door opened, and someone stepped inside. My stomach dropped because even through the grainy footage, the figure was recognizable. Elena, younger, maybe 16, but clearly her. She walked into the control room alone. A few seconds later, smoke began pouring into the hallway. The footage cut abruptly. The silence that followed was unbearable. Hale slowly lowered the phone. "Elena," his voice carried disbelief, "you told me you were asleep in your room." Her eyes filled with emotion. "I was trying to fix something." Victor chuckled quietly. "That's one way to describe it." Elena turned on him instantly. "Shut up." Victor simply smiled again. "Or perhaps you were trying to destroy something." My mind was racing. None of this made sense. "Elena," I said cautiously, "what were you doing in that room?" She looked at me like she wanted to explain everything at once, but the words struggled to come out. I wasn't trying to start a fire." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Then why were you inside the electrical control room with a screwdriver?" Her eyes flashed. "You followed me." "Correct. And you locked the door behind me." Victor shrugged. "That's not what the footage shows." Hale's voice cut through the tension. "Enough." Everyone fell silent again. He looked at Elena carefully. "Tell me the truth." Her shoulders sagged slightly. "I went to the control room because the security system was malfunctioning." "Why were you fixing it yourself?" "Because someone had disabled the alarm." Victor smiled slowly. "Interesting theory." "It's not a theory," she snapped. "I saw someone leaving that hallway earlier." "Who?" Hale asked. Elena hesitated, then pointed directly at Victor. Victor clapped once. "Well, that accusation again." Hale looked sharply at him. "Did you disable the alarm system?" Victor spread his hands. "No, but I did see Elena entering the control room." "And what happened next?" Hale demanded. Victor sighed dramatically. Smoke began filling the hallway. And? Victor opened his mouth to continue, but Elena spoke first. "Someone tried to trap me." The two statements collided in the air, and suddenly the story felt even more tangled. Then Elena did something unexpected. She reached into the small clutch bag she had been carrying all evening. "Dad, there's something you need to see too." Victor's eyes narrowed instantly. "What is that?" Elena pulled out a small flash drive. "This." Victor's calm expression cracked for the first time. "Where did you get that?" Elena's voice steadied. "From the hospital archives." "Hospital?" Hale frowned. She nodded. "The night of the fire, doctors documented my injuries." "That's obvious." "Yes," she said quietly, "but they also documented something else." Victor's jaw tightened. Elena looked directly at her father. "I wasn't just burned." "What do you mean?" Hale asked. Her next words shook the entire balcony. "I had blunt force trauma to the back of my head." Silence. Total silence. Victor spoke slowly. "Smoke inhalation causes confusion." "Elena," Hale said carefully, "what are you suggesting?" She turned toward Victor, her eyes blazing. "I'm suggesting someone hit me before the fire started." Victor laughed softly. "This is getting dramatic." But Elena wasn't finished. She plugged the flash drive into the phone. Another file opened. A medical scan appeared. Hale leaned closer to the screen. His expression hardened, because the scan clearly showed a fracture, exactly where Elena said. Victor's calm mask slipped again, and in that moment, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This was proof of attempted murder, and the man accused of it was standing only a few feet from us. But before anyone could speak, Victor suddenly said something that changed everything again. "Elena," he said quietly, "you should really stop digging into the past." She glared at him. "Why?" Victor looked directly at me, then back at her. "Because the deeper you dig," his voice became colder, "the more people around you get hurt." My blood ran cold, because the way he said it sounded less like a warning and more like a threat. The moment Victor finished speaking, the air on the balcony changed. Not tense, not uncomfortable, dangerous. The fireworks outside were still exploding across the night sky, sending waves of color over the city, but none of us noticed anymore, because the threat hanging in Victor's voice was impossible to ignore. "The deeper you dig," he had said, "the more people around you get hurt." His eyes flicked toward me for just a second. That was enough. A cold realization ran down my spine. He wasn't just threatening Elena, he was threatening me. Elena stepped forward. Her voice was steady now. "Are you admitting it?" Victor raised an eyebrow. "Admitting what?" "That you attacked me that night?" Victor laughed softly. "Elena, accusations are easy. Evidence is harder." She held up the phone again, showing the medical scan. "This says I was struck before the fire started." Victor shrugged. "Doctors make mistakes." Hale's voice cut in sharply. "Enough." Everyone went quiet, because the tone in Jonathan Hale's voice had changed. This was no longer a father listening to arguments. This was a CEO evaluating a betrayal. He looked at Victor carefully. "You were the first person at the scene that night." "Yes." "You handled the investigation." "Yes." You provided the official report. Victor nodded calmly. That is correct. Hale's eyes narrowed. And now my daughter is presenting evidence that she was assaulted before the fire. Victor gave a thin smile. Allegedly. The word hit the air like a slap. Elena's patience finally snapped. You're unbelievable. Victor tilted his head. You're emotional. I nearly died. And yet here you are. The cruelty in that sentence made my fists tighten. But Hale remained calm. Too calm. Victor, he said slowly, why does the footage you provided end before the fire begins? Victor didn't hesitate. The system malfunctioned. Convenient? Technology fails? Hale's stare hardened. Yes, but rarely at such convenient moments. Victor said nothing. The tension stretched into silence. Then Elena looked directly at her father. Dad, you know I wouldn't lie about this. Hale's eyes softened slightly. I know. Victor scoffed. Do you? The two men stared at each other, years of trust suddenly cracking. Then Victor sighed dramatically. Fine. All three of us looked at him. If you insist on digging up the past, then let's talk about the past. His eyes moved to Elena. You weren't just in the control room that night. Her jaw tightened. You were deleting files. That's not true. Victor's voice sharpened. You were erasing security recordings. Hale turned slowly toward his daughter. Elena, is that true? She hesitated, just for a second, but that second was enough. Victor smiled. There it is. Elena shook her head. I wasn't covering anything up. Then why were you deleting footage? She looked directly at Hale. Because someone was already in the system. Victor chuckled. A mysterious someone. Yes, she snapped. The same person who hit me. Victor clapped slowly. Excellent story. But something about Elena's expression told me she wasn't bluffing. She believed every word. I spoke up carefully. Elena, what exactly did you see that night? She looked at me, then at her father. Finally, she said the words that froze the balcony. I saw Victor inside the system server. Victor immediately laughed. That's ridiculous. You were accessing security files. I manage the company infrastructure, Victor replied calmly. That's my job. But you were deleting files, she insisted. Victor shrugged. Maintenance. Hale's gaze shifted between them. And the blow to Elena's head? Victor's expression hardened. I never touched her. Elena whispered coldly, You're lying. The fireworks were reaching their finale now, massive explosions lighting the sky. But the real explosion was happening on that balcony because the trust between Hale and Victor was hanging by a thread, and everyone knew it. Victor looked at Hale. Jonathan, think about this logically. Hale didn't answer. Your daughter claims I attacked her. Yes, but she was found inside the electrical control room with tools. Hale's eyes moved to Elena. Why were you carrying tools? Her voice lowered. Because someone disabled the alarm system. Victor spread his hands. There's still zero proof of that. Elena's frustration was obvious now. Because someone deleted the logs. Victor smiled slowly. And who had access to those logs? The question landed like a trap. Elena froze. Victor leaned closer. You did. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Victor delivered the sentence that changed everything. Elena was the last person logged into the system that night. Hale's eyes darkened. Is that true? Elena swallowed. Yes. Victor stepped back triumphantly. Case closed. But I felt something was wrong, very wrong, because Victor seemed too confident, like he had rehearsed this. And then a bot hit me. Elena, when you accessed the system, did you use your personal login? Yes,
but the activity log showed something strange. Victor's eyes flicked toward me. What do you mean? Elena frowned. There were 2 sessions running. The balcony went silent again. 2? Hale asked. Yes, one under my name and another under Victor's. Victor's smile faded instantly. That's impossible. Elena stepped closer to him. That's exactly what I thought. Victor's voice sharpened. You're lying. No, she said quietly. I copied the log files before the fire spread. Victor's calm mask shattered for the first time. You don't have those logs. Elena smiled faintly. Actually, she reached into her clutch again. I do. The small data chip appeared between her fingers. Victor's eyes widened. Where did you... But before he could finish, something unexpected happened. Hale reached forward and took the chip from her hand. He turned slowly toward Victor. For the first time all night, the CEO looked genuinely angry. If these logs show what Elena claims, his voice was ice, then you've been lying to me for years. Victor's confidence cracked. You're making a mistake. Hale ignored him. He handed the chip to his security chief. Run the data. The guard nodded and stepped inside. Victor suddenly...
For a split second, nobody moved. Not me, not Elena, not even Jonathan Hale. The only sound was the echo of the final fireworks exploding across the sky behind us. And in the middle of that chaos, Victor was standing there with a gun. He didn't wave it wildly. He didn't shout. That was the most terrifying part. His hand was steady, calm, like a man who had already decided exactly how this night would end. Well, Victor said quietly, this has become very inconvenient. The security guards at the balcony door froze because the gun was already pointed toward Hale. No sudden movements, Victor added. The wind whipped across the balcony, rustling Elena's dress as she stepped slightly closer to her father. Victor, don't do this, she said. Victor gave a soft laugh. Oh, Elena, this stopped being your decision years ago. Hale's voice was controlled. You're making a catastrophic mistake. Victor shrugged. Actually, I'm correcting one. The city lights stretched endlessly below us, 30 floors down. A fall from this balcony would be instant. Victor glanced briefly over the railing, then back at Hale. You know what your biggest weakness has always been, Jonathan? Hale didn't respond. Trust. Victor's voice grew colder. You trusted me with your company, with your security systems, with your family. His eyes flicked toward Elena, and unfortunately, Elena started asking the wrong questions. Elena stepped forward again. You tried to kill me. Victor didn't deny it this time. Instead, he sighed. I wasn't supposed to survive that fire. My heart skipped. The confession hung in the air like poison. Hale's jaw tightened. Why? Victor smiled bitterly. Because your empire was built on fragile control, and Elena, she wasn't controllable. Elena stared at him in disbelief. So you burned me alive? Victor shrugged slightly. That was the plan. The words felt unreal, like hearing someone casually describe a nightmare. But Victor continued calmly. You were snooping through company records. Elena frowned. What records? Victor's eyes hardened. Financial transfers. Hale's attention sharpened immediately. What transfers? Victor chuckled. Oh, Jonathan, you really didn't know? Hale's silence was answer enough. Victor shook his head slowly. For years, I've been moving money through the international branches. My stomach dropped. You stole from the company? I said. Victor smirked at me. Not stole. Reallocated. Elena's voice was furious. And when I discovered it, you tried to kill me? Victor nodded lightly. You weren't supposed to discover anything. He looked toward Hale again. But she did. And when she accessed the server room that night, I had to act. Elena whispered in horror. You hit me. Victor shrugged. Unfortunately, the fire spread faster than I expected. Hale's voice was ice. You burned my daughter to cover your theft?
Victor tilted his head. That's one way to phrase it. And tonight, Hale said slowly, you brought a gun to silence her. Victor sighed. I was hoping it wouldn't come to this. Elena's eyes were blazing now. You're finished. Victor laughed softly. No. Then he raised the gun slightly. You are. Everything happened very fast after that. One of the security guards near the door shifted his weight. Victor saw the movement instantly. Don't, he warned. But that single moment of distraction was enough. Hale moved, not toward Victor, but toward Elena. He pulled her behind him just as the guard lunged forward. The gun fired. The sound exploded across the balcony. For a moment, my ears rang. The guard tackled Victor. The gun clattered across the floor. 2 more security officers rushed in from the hallway. Within seconds, Victor was pinned to the ground, struggling, cursing, but completely restrained. The silence afterward felt surreal. Fireworks had ended. The sky was dark again. Victor lay on the floor, breathing heavily as the guards locked metal cuffs around his wrists. You don't understand, he muttered. No, Hale replied coldly. I understand perfectly. The security chief returned from inside the ballroom at that exact moment. He held up a tablet. We verified the data chip. Hale didn't even look at it, but the chief continued anyway. The server logs confirmed Elena's statement. Victor's face drained of color. There were 2 users inside the system that night. He turned the screen toward Hale, one under Elena's login and one under Victor's. The truth was undeniable now. Victor closed his eyes slowly. The game was over. Hale stood quietly for a long moment. Then he looked at Elena. I should have believed you. Her eyes softened. I tried to tell you. I know. His voice carried regret. I failed you. She shook her head slightly. You're here now. The 2 of them stood there in the cool night air, father and daughter, finally on the same side again. Police arrived within 15 minutes. Victor was taken away in silence. No dramatic speeches, no final threats. Just the quiet defeat of a man whose lies had finally collapsed. And just like that, the most powerful executive in Hale International was gone. Hours later, the gala was over. Guests had left, staff were cleaning the ballroom, and I was standing alone near the balcony again, trying to process everything that had happened. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Elena. She stepped beside me at the railing. The city was quieter now. You stayed, she said. I wasn't sure if I should run. She laughed softly. That would have been understandable. For a moment, we just looked out at the skyline. Then she spoke again. You changed everything tonight. I shook my head. You did. No, she said. You believed me when nobody else would. Her voice grew softer. That matters more than you think. I remembered the moment we first danced, the whispers, the stares, the scars everyone pretended not to see. You deserve better people around you, I said. She smiled slightly. I'm starting to find them. Then she turned toward me. Her eyes were warm but serious. Daniel? Yes? She reached out and took my hand again, just like on the dance floor earlier that night. I meant what I said. What? She smiled gently. I won't forget you. And that's the truth. A single dance, one moment of kindness, and suddenly I was standing in the middle of a conspiracy that nearly destroyed an empire. But the strangest part, if I had the chance to go back and change that moment, I wouldn't. Because sometimes the smallest decision, a simple yes to a dance, can change someone's entire life and maybe even save it. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you've ever helped someone when the world told you not to, then